At the age of 94, Robert Duvall finally talked about his greatest life regret: losing the lady he loved. The iconic actor made a surprising admission about how a betrayal, mind games worth millions of dollars, and a single, horrible error cost him everything. That's not even the most absurd aspect, though. Finally, after 60 years of silence, he is revealing the truth about the night she left for good. The birthdate of Robert Duvall was January 5, 1931. California's San Diego. His family had a long history in the arts and in the military. Mildred Virginia Hart, his mother, did acting as a hobby. Confederate General Robert E. Lee was a descendant of Duvall on her side of the family. Later in his acting career, when he played Lee in Gods and Generals, that historical connection would come into play. He has a U.S. father, William Howard Duvall, Navy Rear Admiral. At just 39 years old, he became a captain after an incredible career. Duvall, a high-ranking officer's son, was raised in a disciplined yet rigorous home. The naval bases in Virginia, Rhode Island, and Maryland were frequent stops for his family. He was raised primarily in Annapolis, Maryland. Robert showed little interest in following his father's wishes in joining the Navy. He later acknowledged that, other from acting, he was awful at everything and had difficulty in school. While attending Maryland's Severn School, he developed a passion for performing. Attending the Principia in St. Louis, Missouri, made it stronger. He enrolled at Illinois' Principia College to study drama after high school. Although he earned a degree in drama in 1953, his acting career had to wait. In the same year, Duvall joined the U.S. Army. August 19, 1953, to August 20, 1954, was his tenure. Shortly after the Korean War, he was assigned to Georgia's Camp Gordon, which is now Fort Eisenhower. Duvall's Army tenure was uneventful, in contrast to his father's illustrious service in the Navy. After receiving the rank of Private First Class at the end of his service, he later made fun of his lack of military expertise. He denied rumors about his service in interviews, claiming at one point that he had barely qualified with the M1 rifle during training. His brief tenure in the Army helped him discover his actual purpose. He participated in the Augusta, Georgia, local theatrical production of Room Service while assigned to Camp Gordon. That encounter reaffirmed his love of performing. Robert Duvall made a decision that would change his life in 1955. He relocated to New York City to attend the local Playhouse School of the Theater to pursue acting studies. This institution gained notoriety for teaching the Sanford Meisner style, which emphasized genuine feelings and organic performances. James Caan, Dustin Hoffman, and Gene Hackman were among his classmates. They were all budding performers vying for fame and encouraging one another to get better. Even though the training was rigorous, Duvall stood out for his commitment. He was doing more than merely following the rules. He was beginning to understand how to give each job genuine dimension. It was difficult to live in New York. Due to his limited resources, Duvall took on all assignments he could. He worked as a mail sorter at the Manhattan Post Office, a Christmas rush hour clerk at Macy's, and a truck driver when he needed additional money. Despite having nothing to do with performing, he gained something from these gigs: a link with common people. He used this experience to help him add realism to his roles in The Apostle and Tender Mercies later in his career. He shared apartments with Gene Hackman and Dustin Hoffman at this time. Taking turns sleeping on a fold-out couch and making do with what they had, they were all having a hard time. Hoffman was a janitor at one point, and Hackman was deemed the least likely to succeed by his colleagues. Despite having nothing but their talent and willpower, they never gave up. The trio would go on to receive 5 Academy Award victories and 19 nominations in subsequent years. The theater gave Duvall his first significant break. He was able to demonstrate his abilities through off-Broadway shows. In The Midnight Caller, he portrayed reclusive alcoholic Harvey Weems. And Horton Foote, a dramatist, was drawn to his performance. He played challenging parts, such as Eddie Carbone in A View from the Bridge, for which he won an Obie Award in 1965. In 1962, Robert Duvall made his cinematic debut in To Kill a Mockingbird. He portrayed the enigmatic and quiet character Boo Radley, who remains hidden until the very end of the narrative. He left an enduring impression without saying a word. His performance demonstrated how much an actor might convey simply by being there and having experience. This was the beginning of the commitment that would characterize his career. After seeing Duvall perform in The Midnight Caller, screenwriter Horton Foote thought he would be a great choice for Boo. To Kill a Mockingbird author Harper Lee accepted his recommendation for the part. Duvall went to extreme lengths to prepare for the role, she wrote in a telegram. For 6 weeks, he stayed out of the sun to get the pale, spectral appearance of someone who has been alone for years. In the novel, he also bleached his hair blonde to fit Boo's description. Even though he didn't say a word, these minor yet significant nuances gave his portrayal a sense of authenticity. Boo isn't shown until the very end of the movie, although his presence is gradually increased. Scout Finch has a silent epiphany when she finally spots him and murmurs, "Hey Boo." Boo is shown to be a protector after initially being perceived as an odd and scary character. It is him who protects Scout and her brother from danger. In that instant, he becomes the protagonist of the tale, the real Mockingbird, a representation of innocence damaged by the outside world. Duvall's first appearance in the movie was a single sentence. It was cut, though. That choice simply strengthened his performance. Didn't require words to have an effect. His movements and the way he gazed at Scout were quite telling. Reviewers and viewers took note. He was distinctive even in a silent role. Tom Hagen, played by Robert Duvall in The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, is among the most iconic roles in movie history. Hagen served as the Corleone family's attorney, but he did more. He was their confidant and the one who conducted business using both words and force. Hagen stood out from the rest of the family, played by Duvall with calm strength. Although Vito Corleone adopted him as a child, he always felt alienated due to his German-Irish heritage. He had no passion for power or emotion as Sonny or Michael did. He was cool, rational, and forward-thinking. Duvall's performance in The Godfather was particularly noteworthy when it was released in 1972. He elevated Hagen above the level of a supporting role. Every significant choice, whether it involved managing talks or resolving issues, felt his influence. At the beginning of the movie, he had one of his greatest moments. When he went to see Jack Walls, a Hollywood producer. Hagen made a courteous request for Johnny Fontaine to be cast in a film in an attempt to reason with him. When that failed, the Corleones delivered a more powerful message, and Walls woke up next to the severed skull of his beloved horse, which made him very afraid. Although Hagen did not personally deliver the threat, he ensured that it was understood. The role of Hagen got much more complex by the time of The Godfather Part 2 in 1974. The person who betrayed Michael had to flee the country after he survived an assassination attempt. At that point, Hagen took over the role of the acting Don. It demonstrated the extent of the family's faith in him. But Hagen's influence began to wane as Michael became more brutal. Michael excluded him from important choices in a manner that Vito never did. Duvall used subtlety in this shift. Hagen's commitment remained unwavering, but his eyes were filled with doubt. Although he didn't always support Michael's decisions, he never abandoned the family. He received a nomination for Best Supporting Actor at the 1972 Academy Awards for his performance. The nomination demonstrated his significance, even though he did not win. In contrast to Pacino or Brando, who portrayed characters whose energy erupted, Duvall maintained control over Hagen. Big statements and violent outbursts were not necessary for him. His speech was what gave him authority. Always cautious and always measured. He was one of the most intriguing characters in the trilogy because of that disparity. Duvall's return was anticipated when Season 3 was revealed. Hollywood, however, had transformed by 1990. Studio payments to actors had also changed. An offer of $8 million was made to Al Pacino for the movie. Duvall received far less money even though he played a significant role in the first two movies. When he noticed the pay disparity, he declined to return, even though he didn't anticipate earning as much as Pacino. Later, he claimed that he would have agreed if Pacino had earned twice as much, but he left when it was 3 or 4 times more. It was a rewrite of the script without Hagen. Rather than playing a significant part in the narrative, Hagen was entirely absent. According to the movie, he passed away off-screen. As a substitute, a new family attorney, B.J. Harrison, portrayed by George Hamilton, was introduced. However, things were different. Both reviewers and fans felt that the story was lacking Hagen. The loss of Duvall altered the course of the movie, as even Francis Ford Coppola acknowledged. The first idea was to concentrate on the connection between Michael and Hagen, which could have resulted in a power struggle inside the Corleone family. The movie had to go in a different direction instead, and many people think that's why it didn't do as well. Even if he didn't go back, Duvall never stopped being associated with the first 2 movies. His behind-the-scenes accounts over the years have included some of Marlon Brando's peculiar customs. Brando had a reputation for not lining up. He used cue cards that were concealed around the set instead. They were occasionally displayed behind props and even inscribed on walls. In one moment, Brando read lines that were taped to Duvall's chest as he was acting. Searching for words, Brando felt, helped his act feel more organic. No one could dispute the outcomes, yet some viewed it as indolence. Although he famously declined to receive the Academy Award for Best Actor, his portrayal of Don Vito Corleone became legendary. The Godfather meant more to Duvall than just another film. His career took a significant shift at that time. Prior to playing Hagen, he had established himself in movies such as THX 1138, 1971, and MASH, 1970. He became well known, however, because to The Godfather. Throughout movie history, Robert Duvall has portrayed some of the most memorable characters. Though they are always rooted in reality, his portrayals seem larger than life. He portrayed the likable yet terrifying Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore in the 1979 film Apocalypse Now. Francis Ford Coppola's film offers a strange perspective on the Vietnam War. In combat, Kilgore treats war like a game and is nearly too brave. One of his most well-known quotes in movie history is, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." On the American Film Institute's list of the best movie quotes, it was listed. That is Kilgore's defining line. He is totally oblivious to the pain around him and views devastation as victory. The persona was modeled by Duvall after actual military officers he had met. From 1953 to 1954, Duvall was in the Army, and his father was a rear admiral in the Navy. He recognized the mannerisms of troops. Kilgore's strangest moment occurs when, during a bombing attack, he tells his soldiers to surf as though the war weren't taking place. Finally, there is the iconic helicopter attack scene from Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, which is so dramatic that it has become one of the most well-known movie scenes. Although Duvall's time on film was brief, his performance left a lasting impression. Apocalypse Now is one of the best war movies ever filmed thanks to his Golden Globe win for Best Supporting Actor. In The Great Santini the same year, he portrayed a quite different type of military guy. He performed a strong and disturbing portrayal as Lieutenant Colin Wilbur Bull Meacham. A naval pilot who was a typhoon and a hero in combat is the subject of the movie, which is based on Pat Conroy's book. At home. Instead of treating his kids as family, he treats them like warriors and pushes them to their limits. Ben, his son, is the one who suffers the most from his severe and combative parenting. Meacham's basketball game with Ben is one of the most illuminating scenes. Meacham becomes antagonistic after Ben wins, rather than praising him. Losing, even to his own son, is unbearable to him. Meacham wasn't merely a villain, thanks to Duvall. Even though he was unsure of how to convey it, he was able to identify the character's little displays of affection. Critics saw that Meacham became more complicated as a result of his portrayal, which softened some of the book's harsher aspects. The cost of rigorous discipline, pride, and masculinity are all explored in the movie. Meacham makes an unsuccessful attempt to reconcile with his family prior to his passing. Duvall was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor for his performance. A few years later, in Tender Mercies, 1983, he gave one of his most poignant performances. He portrayed a washed-up country musician struggling with alcoholism, Max Sledge, with quiet strength. The movie, which was written by Horton Foote and directed by Bruce Beresford, is about a man who is attempting to start over in a small Texas community. Slowly overcoming his past, he falls in love with a young widow and her son. Duvall traveled more than 600 miles throughout Texas, studied country music culture, and listened to local accents in order to get ready for the role. He gave Mac's songs more realism by performing them entirely himself. In relation to the character, the scene where Mac tries to get back in touch with his estranged daughter is one of the most tragic. He dies in an automobile accident before they can genuinely mend their connection. It serves as a sobering reminder that second opportunities aren't always timely. The film's themes of religion and redemption are handled delicately. According to Duvall, one of his most intimate parts was that of Max Sledge. He was restrained in his portrayal, allowing brief emotional moments to tell the narrative. He received the Best Actor Academy Award for his performance. The movie was hailed for its emotional depth and realism, and despite its small box office performance, it eventually became a masterpiece. However, none of Duvall's roles were as intimate as The Apostle, 1997. He was the star of more than simply one movie. It was a project he loved. With all of his heart, he wrote, directed, and produced it himself. He portrayed Ulysses Sonny Dewey, a Pentecostal pastor who was admirable but also incredibly flawed. In rural Louisiana, Sonny begins over by establishing a new church and baptizing himself as the apostle after committing homicide in a fit of wrath. The picture was first conceived by Duvall in 1984, but no studio was willing to support it. The religious overtones made it difficult to sell. He persisted, finally funding the majority of the $5 million budget himself. To portray the spirit of a genuine Pentecostal assembly, the movie was filmed over 7 weeks in Louisiana utilizing actual churchgoers as extras. Sonny is a compelling figure. Is fervent, charming, and committed to his religion, yet he also battles conceit and rage. In one of the most impactful scenes in the movie, he converts a prejudiced construction worker at a church picnic. His talent for and the complex morals of his character are both highlighted in this moment. Duvall made the performance seem authentic. He played Sonny realistically, avoiding hyperbole. He was successful in his endeavors. He received tremendous praise from critics and was nominated for another Academy Award for The Apostle. Additionally, it was awarded the Movie Guide's Grace Prize for its truthful depiction of Christianity. Despite not being a box office success, the film struck a chord with viewers who were moved by its honest portrayal of salvation. One of America's great art forms, according to Duvall, is preaching, and he brought that art to life on screen with Sonny. Robert Duvall's personal life has been as exciting as his professional life. Having been married 4 times, each marriage shaped a new phase of his life. The first woman he married was Barbara Benjamin. He met a former dancer on the Jackie Gleason show while filming To Kill a Mockingbird in the early 1960s. Barbara had 2 daughters, Nancy and Susan, from a prior relationship by the time they were married in 1964. Duvall continued to build his acting career by accepting parts that would eventually catapult him to stardom in Hollywood. With movies like The Godfather, his career took off over the following 10 years. However, celebrity frequently presents difficulties, and in 1975, their marriage ended in divorce. Even though Duvall doesn't talk much about it, this was a moment of personal and professional development for him. On September 18, 2019, Barbara subsequently died away in the city of New York. In 1982, Duvall wed actress Gail Youngs, 7 years after his first marriage ended. Her family was well known in Hollywood. Among her siblings were Jim Young, Robin Young, and John Savage. In 1983, Duvall and Gail co-starred in Tender Mercies, the movie for which Gail received an Academy Award for Best Actor. Their marriage didn't last, but they had a strong bond through their profession. They separated in 1986. Duvall had previously said that he would never get married, but he made an exception for Gail. It's unclear if their breakup was caused by their common job, although balancing 2 performing careers may be challenging. In 1991, Duvall wed professional dancer Sharon Brophy. The foundation of their relationship was their mutual passion for dancing, particularly Argentine tango. At one point, Sharon even taught him how to tango. However, the marriage did not endure despite a deep bond based on something so intimate. They separated in 1994, having been together for 5 years. In contrast to Duvall's former spouses, Sharon has remained out of the spotlight and maintained a low profile since their split. Later that year, Duvall got to know Argentine actress and filmmaker Luciana Pedraza. It was sheer luck that brought them together. Luciana invited him to a party without knowing who he was. They bonded right away, even though they were 41 years apart in age. Luciana was born in Jujuy Province, Argentina, on January 5, 1972. She was the oldest of 5 sisters. She entered the film industry after graduating with an MBA from the University of Buenos Aires. Over the years, she and Duvall have collaborated on films such as Wild Horses, 2015, and Assassination Tango, 2002. Their mutual love of tango became a major aspect of their existence. 2005 saw their eventual marriage, and have remained coupled ever since. In addition to dance and movies, they have made philanthropy their mission. They established the Robert Duvall Children's Fund in 2001 to aid underprivileged families and children in northern Argentina and other regions of the world. One aspect of each of the 4 marriages was consistent. Duvall never had any kids. Almost never does he talk about it. He mentioned firing blanks in passing in a 2007 interview, but he didn't elaborate. Whether intentional or not, he has never apologized for this. Roles that demonstrated Robert Duvall's ability to give any character depth abound in his latter career. His 1989 performance in Lonesome Dove is among his most cherished roles. He portrayed Augustus Gus McCrae, a retired Texas Ranger who, together with Tommy Lee Jones's character Woodrow Call, embarked on a cattle drive to Montana. Based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Larry McMurtry, the CBS miniseries was a huge hit. During its initial broadcast, which ran from February 5 to February 8, 1989, 26 million people watched and aided in the Western genre's revival. Duvall made Gus one of the most enduring characters on television by giving him a sense of warmth and comedy. Afterwards, he compared the experience to filming The Godfather and declared it his favorite role. Although, in a shocking turn of events, Duvall lost to James Woods for Best Actor in a miniseries for My Name is Bill W., the series received 18 Emmy nominations and won 7. Nevertheless, he did receive a Golden Globe for the part. Gus's story touched a deep emotional chord, particularly his dignified yet tragic dying. He became famous with his last words, "It ain't about dying, Woodrow, it's about living." Duvall's portrayal of Gus is more than just a traditional Western hero won plaudits from critics. By striking a balance between hardness and tenderness, he made the character incredibly relatable. As historical figures, Duvall assumed two challenging roles in the early 1990s. In the 1992 HBO movie Stalin, he portrayed the Soviet autocrat who rose to power through his passing in 1953. The fact that the film was shot in Russia shortly before the fall of the Soviet Union lends it a realistic feel. Duvall got ready by watching old videos and talking to historians. Stalin was a street thug who lived in perpetual paranoia, according to him. He was commended by critics for portraying Stalin as a human being rather than merely a villain. For his portrayal, he was awarded a Golden Globe for Best Actor in a television film or miniseries. Another dark character was Duvall, the guy who had apprehended Eichmann in 1996. Performed the role of Adolf Eichmann, the Nazi war criminal who orchestrated the Holocaust. The movie followed his 1960 detention by Mossad agents in Argentina, his interrogation, and his subsequent deportation to Israel for prosecution. Duvall's performance was terrifying. Instead than portraying Eichmann as a monster, he portrayed him as a bureaucrat who committed heinous acts with icy coldness. He received another Emmy nomination for his performance. He demonstrated his capacity to assume morally challenging roles once more. Duvall maintained his exceptional performances into his latter years. In a 1998 legal case, he portrayed Jerome Thatcher, a shrewd defense lawyer for companies charged with contaminating a town's water supply. He received a Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination for the part. He portrayed Fokker as a realistic man going about his work rather than as a villain. In the 2005 film Get Low, he played Felix Bush, a reclusive hermit from Tennessee in the 1930s who organizes his own death celebration while still living. Duvall's performance was hailed by reviewers as one of his greatest, and the film examined issues of guilt and atonement. He was the winner of the Best Actor Oscar at the Hollywood Film Festival. In 2014, he portrayed Joseph Palmer, a small-town judge facing murder charges who has to make amends with his estranged son, played by Robert Downey Jr. The film's emotional center was their father-son bond. At the age of 84, Duvall's performance garnered him another Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor, demonstrating that his talent never diminished. Robert Duvall had a career that few actors could match for 6 decades. He portrayed a washed-up country musician looking for atonement in Tender Mercies, which earned him an Academy Award in 1983. His constancy and versatility were demonstrated by the 6 Oscar nominations he received over the course of 5 decades. In 2006, he received a Primetime Emmy Award for Broken Trail, a Western miniseries that revolutionized television narrative. He was also the recipient of a BAFTA and 4 Golden Globes. Another struggling actor in New York City in the late 1950s was Robert Duvall. He lived with Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman in a small flat. Hackman and Duvall both shared a tendency to lose their anger easily. Hackman was known for starting fights at bars. He turned to Hoffman one evening and said, "I have to go to a bar and fight." As if that were a normal occurrence. Duvall, who never backs down, occasionally joined in. Before things became too serious, Hoffman was generally the one to get them out of trouble. Their flat was always bustling with models from their acting workshops, performers, and opera singers. Although hectic, it was thrilling. Because of his crazy sense of humor, Duvall kept things interesting. He once walked in as he and his girlfriend were taking a shower, according to a story Hoffman told. Instead of walking away, Duvall undressed, entered the shower, and introduced himself informally. He was a person of that sort. Unvarnished, fearless, and constantly pushing the envelope. Despite all of the chaos, the three held a great regard for one another's abilities. Later, Hoffman referred to Duvall as the new Brando, making him one of the finest actors in history. At the time, that was the greatest compliment anyone could receive. Duvall's fervor and resolve remained unwavering despite the years of hardship that molded them all. He was 71 years old by 2003 and yet wouldn't slow down. During the production of Kevin Costner's Western, Open Range, he insisted on performing his own stunts. He broke multiple ribs after falling from a horse in Calgary, Canada, during pre-production. A stunt double would have taken over, most actors his age would have backed off, or they would have even left the film. No, Duvall said. As soon as he was well, he went back to set from his home in Virginia. His dedication astounded Costner. Later on, he declared that Duvall's performance in Open Range was among the best in Western film history. With Duvall's portrayal of Bluebonnet Boss Spearman, the movie itself gained critical acclaim. His injury merely confirmed what many people already knew. Whenever possible, he would make a performance seem genuine. Like his passion for acting, Duvall had a deep interest for history. While making the 2003 movie Gods and Generals, that relationship took an odd turn. His own historic estate in Virginia served as the backdrop for a few sequences. Duvall found Civil War artifacts, such as cannonballs from previous engagements, when he was researching the area. He already had a significant role in the movie as Confederate General Robert E. Lee. It was made even more intimate by the discovery of real war artifacts on his own land. Was born into a military household. The Rear Admiral was his father. As a result, this link to the past seemed nearly inevitable. The way that Gods and Generals portrayed the Confederacy caused debate. However, its historical authenticity won it a lot of accolades. The distinction between film and reality was blurred as Duvall's estate became a part of that authenticity.